Cool. So yeah, I'll give you a brief outline about me to start, I think. So I'll use Facebook accounts. So I'm Mark, but on Facebook I'm known as Farid. If you were to scroll down, you'd see I'm 23. I'm originally from Leicester. I currently live in London. I did used to have a fake birthday on this that said I was 73. But if you were to go through all of my friends, you'd see that roughly they're aged 23 to 26 anyway, so you could make a pretty good estimation on my age. You would then see, if you wanted to know more about me, you'd see that I'm an atheist, I'm a member of the Labour Party, and if you wanted to know more, you could look at my photos, look at my timeline, you'd see that people post stuff there, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I've got a general kind of issue, kind of following the train of thought, but actually my issue is more to do with the collection of data and the ownership of that data itself, and the fact that the ownership doesn't really lie with the individual anymore. And however much we could say, sorry, I thought this was up already, however much we could like the ideal scenario where it's us putting out that data, ultimately it does come back to more of an NSA train of thoughts, and that's kind of my focus, and that's where I find it more interesting personally, where my work lies. So this is Data Shadow, and that's the exhibition that's just outside that's taking place in a big blue shipping container, and this is kind of what it looks like. So you go inside of it, you join our free public Wi-Fi, which we have put a password on it, but we could have made it automatically connect to your phone if you've ever joined a free Wi-Fi hotspot before, which then we could have been tracking various things. Then a captive portal pops up, which is Apple approved, which then allows us access to our iCloud, and then we take information from it. But the real issue is about making that information personable to people. And we keep on going on about actually the surveillance and the necessary precautions that we should take, or maybe the fact that we're quite angry at the government. It's not quite taking the light. And the trust that we have with the government. And that really is the fundamental issue of, do we actually trust the government after it's been revealed that they have been listening to people's phone calls and have the potential to take any bit of access of information away from us without our permission. If you were going out with someone and they were spying on you to that extent, or put the facilities in place to be tracking you, you would very much so break up with that person, and I think you would never trust them ever again. So why is the government no different? Is it because it's unelected? Is it because, it's unelected officials who are the ones doing it? Is it because we're so powerless and helpless in this whole thing that we're not really able to do anything about it? And I think that kind of is the real issue, and I think it's about bringing you face to face with your own information, showing you that you're not actually one in control of your data. So in this exhibition, we take your last 1,000 characters of your most recent text messages and 64 images from your mobile phone that first you sent by text message or WhatsApp, and then just generic images on your mobile phone, and stitch them together, and then as you move around from left to right, because we're tracking your physical shape, you kind of are your data in its most literal sense. But this idea of you being your data, we don't own that data, as we all know. And, it was discussed in Congress last year whether the Fourth Amendment applies to non-US citizens. The Fourth Amendment essentially being the right to privacy. The Fourth Amendment coming in place after the British Redcoats in the American Revolution, which barged down the doors of American revolutionaries and just take whatever they wanted, whether it be whiskey or whether it actually be for more legal reasons. So the Fourth Amendment was made in reaction to that, to allow for privacy and the need for a warrant for a very specific need and cause, and you had to make that very explicit. So it's discussed, and it was agreed last year in Congress that the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply to non-US citizens' data. So any information that passes through an American server as a non-US citizen located not in the US, you have no right whatsoever to that privacy. Now, when we talk about not US citizens, that is 95% of the world's population. And the more important part of that is, how does that actually get legally allowed? And, it comes back to FISA, which was created in 1979 in response to Richard Nixon, and how he was treating anyone who was against him. And that law essentially allows for any form of spying. But in 2008, it got pulled together in 3 ways that had never been done before, which said that first of all, it didn't apply to non-US citizens. The second was that it applied to cloud storage-based systems of storing your information. And the third stated that it didn't necessarily apply to terror threats or national security, which inherently just means it's spying. And that's the same methods of which Angela Merkel's communications was intercepted. Amnesty International's, 98% of Latin America's communications, Red Cross, and so on and so forth. And we've just portrayed this idea of national security over and over again, and this idea that we've got nothing to hide, so it doesn't matter. But actually that idea of having nothing to hide is inherently teaching us that we're guilty until proven innocent. It's saying that we need that deterrent in that off chance that actually we are accused of something. But actually what that makes you do is it makes you conform. It makes you self-censor your actions, your thoughts, what you search, what you're able to learn, who you will meet, who you'll be friends with, what you do. And for me, that is the real problem, is self-censorship. And we can cry for a better world, we can aim for opening up everything, but actually I think it's almost irrelevant until we're able to actually trust the governments who are putting in place any structure that we are living within and any facilities that we're using. And for that to really be the case, technology has to be regulated by government. And I say this in Cambridge where people, might disagree with that, and it will slow down progression of technology, but there is no way that technology can carry on how it's been going, totally unregulated, fully privatized. Every website is the capitalist dream. The business model is the utopia for capitalism. And this lack of regulation is something which we've seen a need for in various ways, but more so in the phone hacking scandal. Where the phone hacking scandal, it's about news of the world rather than phone hacking itself and how easy it was for them to access people's answer phone messages. But that 0000 answer phone code on everyone's phones, isn't that up to government to regulate that and to stop companies making it so easy and basic? And maybe it's laziness as opposed to anything else. But that laziness starts to affect individual people, as we're able to see. And it's just a case that we haven't seen it on a public scale enough yet. That's the first real bit of data hacking into individual people. But I think we all accept at some point, whether it's near or slightly further distant future, the individual's information will start to come out. And how does that then start to affect how you start to behave? And it's the behavioural changes in the individual, which is the important thing, isn't it? Because isn't that what freedom of speech, living in the Western world, is all about? It's about being free and being able to be who you want to be. But when you're having total surveillance, there's always going to be that chance that it could be misused, that chance that it could be taken advantage of, or that chance that it could be used against you, which we did see, which Rachel, one of the commissioners for this project of collusion, regularly says. And in the Labour elections for Jeremy Corbyn, for the leadership, the very fact that they went through people's social media and other places and found out that people who voted Green or in favour of the Green Party weren't allowed to vote for the leadership, purely because they in some way publicly stated their allegiance, so to speak, to the Green Party, you're not allowed to change your mind. And that documentation of you is always going to be there. And that's something that Eric Schmidt, the chief executive of Google, and Jared Cohen, the head of Google Ideas, who used to be on the Bush administration for policy planning, then the advisor to Condoleezza Rice, then the advisor to Hillary Clinton before working at Google, are very much so pushing that do never in any way allow any form of documentation, whether that be through what you're doing, what you're searching, who you're talking to, or even where you go. When your phone is tracking you at all times, without your permission, put there automatically, then we're starting to get into a more physical self as well. It's no longer just about the virtual thoughts, because the two are entwining more and more and more, as we all know, which then raises questions over why isn't there a technology minister? Why isn't there anyone in the government actually really involved in this? Why is it that technology can do whatever they like? So this is kind of just in a very quick nutshell how I see the internet. And fundamentally, as I say, I think it's the capitalist dream. And I've used democracy there in its, ironically, in the opposite to dictatorship, because it's somewhere in the middle, I think, but I think we're given the illusion of democracy anyway. So it comes to, ultimately, it's a search engine. That's how we get onto the internet. And Google, will answer any question you want. And that algorithm is tailored specifically to you to decide what's most relevant to you. And it's very convenient and very helpful, and I do use Google. But then the important thing about that is when you read a newspaper, you buy the Times or the Telegraph or the Guardian or the Daily Mail or the Independent, you make an educated decision into going for a specific opinion. But with Google, we don't know what their specific opinion is. We don't know where their bias lies. And it's very much the same with Facebook, or any tailored news feed for you, which answers any question that you don't ask. And that's the brilliancy of it, and I think that's where the addictive nature comes from. And specifically with Facebook, when you're getting fed lots of information which you think is great for you, but you're not the one searching it, that is actually, to an extent, I would argue, conditioning in the way that it makes you behave, in the way that it keeps on come back to it. It is a drug. We all know it's a drug. But where Facebook is even cleverer, is in its illusion to make you feel like you're a celebrity or crave the jealousy of others. And where it really is problematic is where people post things about you. And we're happy about that because it's publicly being acknowledged as a social creature, as someone cool or whatever you want to do with it. But that sense of anonymity and that right to your image and the right to privacy, I think, is the thing that Facebook is truly successful in destroying, whilst making every party happy, whilst Facebook collects more and more data on you. So, when we were working on Data Shadow, I'm going to wrap it up. While we were working on Data Shadow, we were looking at different ways of hacking into your phone, which is by Richard, who was there, he's the programmer. And we were looking at different methods. And one method was whether it's just tracking what you're doing on the screen at any given time. So, we joined, it's not the right side. So we joined the free public Wi-Fi, which we set up. I logged into my Facebook account, like many people would do. And then there was if you look at the bottom, then you'd see my email and password. And then the same applies for online banking, which people use all the time. And you'd see there that my password, 1712 Leicester 123. You'd see then my online banking passwords, and you're able then to access that kind of information. That when we become our data, when everything that we start to do is tracked more and more and more, our behaviour, I think, isn't up to us. I think at that point it's relinquished of all control. In the same way that there's a structure to society, in the same way that you are made to conform by the very rigid structure of going to school, education, this need for wealth, what's socially acceptable, what isn't socially acceptable, the legality, what interests are made available to you and what interests aren't made available to you, what even the restrictions of media allows, this free, open media, which is a great thing. By being free and open, it also very much puts out restrictions in what isn't socially acceptable. They put the guidelines of the limitations of freedom just as much as they push the boundaries of freedom. So when all of your data is being tracked and all of it's being used potentially against you, but I don't believe it is right now, but if that potential is there, you've got to start asking, how can you bring it back to yourself? How can you empower yourself? How can you take responsibility over it? My two kind of steps in the right direction is one, it being regulated by government, and secondly, the delete button on your computer actually deleting stuff. That will put you back in control of information. That button currently lies to us. It's a very small, easy step, and it would get there. But these are quite, they're not really going to happen, right? Not for a while anyway, with the money that's involved in these things. So my solution, which kind of gets there, I did on Monday in the talk for Data Shadow, which was titled "Anonymity is Our Only Right, and This is Why It Must Be Destroyed." And in that talk, it's, my solution to this whole thing is by giving away my passwords to everything. So there is my Apple ID, my Facebook, my Twitter, my Just Eat. Any other password that isn't there will be Leicester123, Leicester-123, the hyphen strokes, and one of those emails. And I encourage all of you to take it, do whatever you want with it. You can have my phone number, you can take my Apple ID. I will still be paying for that contract, so it's yours. And yeah, thank you. Oh, and thank you to Collusion, by the way, may I just say, for funding this project and making it possible. And I heavily encourage any of you and all of you to come to Data Shadowing, which is just outside in a blue shipping container. But due to technical problems, it is only iCloud that it works with. And I apologise for that and take full responsibility. Thank you.